Hey, Lee Robinson here at American Sentinel K9. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate your support. In this video, we're going to discuss what should be top priority when selecting a working dog. Is drives the most important criteria, or is nerves perhaps more important? Now, after 30 years of experience in the canine industry, 20 years as a professional breeder of the American Sentinel K9, which is a type of band dog, and 10 years prior to that, getting my degrees in animal sciences, where I focused on behavior and genetics. My degree was reproductive physiology for my master's degree, so I also had to get into endocrinology. I will tell you that never in my 30 years have I seen somebody discuss this topic with the consideration of how the hormones will impact the nerves or drive of an animal. And it's kind of mind-blowing that this is not considered when selecting the right dog for the task. So it should be, and that's because adrenaline, which is a hormone known as epinephrine, does impact these behaviors, drives and nerves. Now, if you've ever been in an altercation or in a situation where you thought an altercation could occur, you probably had some sort of butterflies in your stomach before the altercation began. But once the altercation began, you generally speaking lose that. That nerves kind of just disappear after the altercation occurs, especially if you've been in it for more than 5 or 10 seconds. You don't have time to be nervous. You got to actually react. So the first 5 seconds or less, maybe there's some nerve issues. But once an engagement begins, nerves are no longer important. And it's not surprising to actually notice this to also be true in the canine industry, because many of the best game dogs that ever existed were actually not that solid in the nerves department. Some of them actually get nervous about certain things, but yet these same dogs will give their life to complete the task that they started. Why? It's because of adrenaline. Now you might think, well, you don't know that, Lee. I mean, that's just speculation. Actually, go do some research on the game dogs, and you will find that the game dogs that were oftentimes complete dominators, many of them had solid nerves, but many of them didn't. Some of them were timid in certain situations. And another thing is, we know that growth hormone and testosterone are used in conditioning, but something that a lot of people don't know, but you can actually research this if you choose to, that a lot of times stress-related hormones are used to right before a competitive event in the game dog industry. So again, this information is out there, and somebody might ask, why would somebody use a stress-related hormone right before an event? Well, that's because adrenaline does a couple of things to an individual. One, the peripheral awareness of the environment diminishes. They no longer see what's going on around them. They just have that tunnel vision of what's directly in front of them. All right, and so they don't even, there's people that confirm this too in stressful situations, perhaps a situation of combat. A lot of times when some sort of firearm related combat has occurred, they've asked people, witnesses, how many times guns were fired and whatnot, and a lot of times different witnesses have different answers, and then when they count the shells that have been on the ground, they see that pretty much everyone's wrong, or very few people are right, and that's because they lost awareness of what's going on around them, and they were all focused on what was directly in front of them. That's one thing that happens with adrenaline. Another thing that happens with adrenaline is we have a decrease in our pain sensitivity, which means an increase in our pain tolerance. We're more willing to tolerate injuries and not even know that we are injured until after the event is over. Once the chaos has ended, then we are able to self-assess and see what kind of condition or injuries that we have. But during the chaos, you may not even have felt it, because our sensitivity decreases. So we're no longer sensitive to those things. Another thing that happens when adrenaline occurs is your trachea dilates, which improves the respiratory system, and your blood vessels dilate, which improves the circulatory system, and this helps deliver more oxygen to the muscles and removal of carbon dioxide and lactic acid from the system. And this is important for long-term performance. So that's why they use adrenaline-based hormones prior to competitive events in the game dog world. And that's also why drives is extremely important for hog catch dogs as well. Nerves are not quite as important in those realms. But if you're interested in sport work or police work or military work, situations where you're going to be conditioning a dog to certain events time and time again, and you know that acclimation to a certain environment, the dog is going to be less likely to have an adrenaline response. And so for those situations where the dog is going to maintain a lot of peripheral awareness and a lot of the work is going to be done out of drive anyway, then for those situations you want a dog that's going to have super solid nerves. It's going to have to deal with maybe pom-poms on leaf blowers attached to so they're fluttering around, or maybe you'll have chainsaws with the blades removed making all kinds of racket, or smoke bombs and fog horns and curtains of water bottles and water bottle pits and things like that that the dog's going to be exposed to, just to see how the dog's responding to all types of crazy environments, maybe police cars with sirens blowing, etc. And the dog's going to have to be able to work in all of these high stimulus environments with all this peripheral awareness still intact, because there is no adrenaline response. How are you going to get those dogs to work reliably? They're going to have solid nerves. So let's consider the task at hand. Is adrenaline going to be produced in this dog's job description? Well, even though hog hunting dogs may go out repetitively and see that same chaos time and time again, they don't really get acclimated to it in the point of no longer having an adrenaline response, because they know that every time they go out, this is a real combat. There's no safety rules. In sports, there are safe rules. Those dogs know they're not going to get hurt if they're been properly trained. They don't think they're going to get hurt, because everything is, you increase the pain and you increase the stress, etc. in sport work, but there are still rules, and the dog eventually learns this through acclimation. But with hog hunting, they know that they're actually attacking something, and for protection work, they know that they're actually being attacked and counterattacking. And for sentry work, they know that they're actually being attacked and counterattacking. For sport work, they know rules are to be followed. And for police work, they generally speaking are trained very similar to your sport dogs, but then they're going to have to be tested in a more potentially serious situation. But again, you want the nerves to be solid for police work, because they're being exposed to all types of environment. While a protection dog and a hog dog and a sentry dog, they're generally speaking going to be working in environments that they're already basically familiar with. So I hope that this video offers you a little bit of insight. So in conclusion, sport work, I want the dog with the better nerves. For personal protection and sentry and hog catch, I want the dog with the better drives. But in either situation, if the dog is weak in either area, regardless of the job, I don't want those dogs at all, because I do believe it's important to have at least some minimal standard, and that minimal standard should be pretty high before we can proceed with accepting this dog, because dogs that need to be culled need to be culled. Anyway, Lee Robinson from American Sentinel K9. If you learned anything from this video or gained a new perspective, like I said, please give us a thumbs up or subscribe. Again, we appreciate your support. Y'all have a blessed day.